Hey beautiful people, it's me Daryl and I'm back with another video. Today's video will be my May reading wrap-up. This is the first time that I'm doing a reading wrap-up on film, so it is exciting times. I'm not going to go into a long introduction. As you know, I do one long take, so whatever happens, happens. Not going to stress myself out. I'm going to be talking about 8 books. I believe it's 8 books that I read in the month of May, and I'm going to be doing them I'm going to be talking about them in the order of how I read them. And that's it. And I'm just going to dive right in. Whatever happens, happens. So enter my journey, I should say. So the first book I'm going to talk about is To the Lighthouse. And where has this book been my whole life? I am saying this in an extra way because I did read 2 Virginia Woolf books before, Orlando and Mrs. Dalloway, and as much as I liked and admired them, I wasn't head over heels in love with them. And that was a shame because Woolf was just an author I assumed that I was just going to feel so passionate about. And then entered this book and it's like, okay. I do get it. I understand it. This is just such a gorgeous piece of writing. What my takeaway from it is just the poetry of the words in this. This is what sold me. There is really no plot per se. The book is basically about a mother who promises her son that they're going to go visit the lighthouse, and the father stands in the way and says that that's not going to happen. And then you also follow like some of the house guests that stay with them. Basically bare bones plot. Not a lot of things happening or whatever, and I don't mind bare bones plot, but this really is bare bones. But it's the gorgeous writing, the poetry of the words. It's just delicious the way that Virginia Woolf crafts her sentences. I think the second part is what really sold me on this book, because the second part kind of like tells the story through the viewpoint of like the house or the setting, which was such an unusual way to tell this story. And I was like, okay, damn, Virginia Woolf, like you have the goods. You knew what you were doing. So like I said, my takeaway for this is just how gorgeous the book is. It's stunning piece of writing. You cannot like read this and say to me that you can't, like, those sentences aren't delicious, you know? Basically To the Lighthouse sold me on Virginia Woolf, and now I get it. I understand people, so don't come for me. The second book that I'm going to talk about is Cursed Bread. Now, I didn't expect to love this book as much as I did for 2 reasons. First, the debut novel of this author, I really did not like it. It's The Water Cure, in case you don't know. I read that a few years ago, and for me, the thing that this author really conveys, and she did it again in this book, is atmosphere. In The Water Cure, atmosphere, it was there. But other than that, I really did find this book, that book was very empty. I really was not a fan of it. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people who stand that book, and I really couldn't stand it. I just didn't like it. To me, it was just... But with this book, I was surprised by how much I liked it, because also on Goodreads and stuff, this is not getting very good reviews. I mean, basically it's like being raked over the coals, I would say. But to me, I just loved it. I have a soft spot for stories about obsession, and when it's done right, it's done right. This character, I was feeling this character. I felt I understood this character. I also had knowledge about the massacre that occurs in this book, where basically the book is sort of like trying to do a loosely true story on the massacre of Le Pain Maudit. I knew a bit about that already to begin with, so that also was quite interesting. And to me, the ending in this is like pretty bonkers, but in a way I felt that it was fitting for this book, because it was just like there was so much tension and uncertainty and things like that brewing in the background, and it's just like building, and you know it's got to implode in some way. And I do like how it was done, like that bonkers kind of like out there ending. I really did feel it, and I felt it stayed true to the book. Cursed Bread to me was such a surprise. I really enjoyed this book. Like I said, she nailed atmosphere. The writing was tight. The characterization leaped off the page. It was very intriguing. I just loved it. Even like the bread imagery and things like that, I adored. So I implore you, please pick this book up. I mean, I know that some of the reviews have been a bit scathing, so maybe you might want to take their advice, and maybe you might read this after like I say this, and you'll be like, I don't know what Daryl was talking about, but anyway, I still say go for this. Give it a try. The next book, I'm not going to really talk about these two very much because if you saw previous videos of mine, you would know. So I read Time Shelter next, and this won the International Booker Prize. When I talked about it in a video previously, it did not. It hadn't won as yet. Like I said, I love this book. I think it's clever. I felt it was missing heart. There was just something that kept me from a distance, and I don't know. I haven't really changed my mind on that, but I'm not mad that it won. I do believe it is clever, and I think a lot of people get something out of it. But for me, it was not. I can't lie and say, oh, like I'm so thrilled that this won, but hey, we can't win them all. Our favorites can't always win the prize, right? The next one is Stillborn, which was on the International Booker Prize, and yeah, I feel like my feelings on this book, I liked it before, but I think as I'm getting a little bit more distance with it, I like it less, which is kind of bad, but I do feel that there's an emotional core to it. It was emotional, like I was on an emotional ride, and that's always something I appreciate in a book. But I don't know, I kind of feel this book is forgettable in ways, not forgettable necessarily with what happens in the book, but just the writing to me just didn't really impress me, and that's all I gotta say on it. Don't hate it, but definitely not a lover of it. Now the next book is Just Above Your Head, or is it my head? Oh my God, Just Above My Head. Whoops. So this is James Baldwin. This actually completes this completes all the James Baldwin novels. Like I've read all the James Baldwin novels once I completed this one. Now the thing is, some of you may know that Another Country was my favorite James Baldwin book, and a lot of people when I was reading this one told me this is gonna change that. This is the best book that he's written. Do I find it is the best one? I'm not sure. Well, actually, I do know the answer to it. I just don't want to tell you yet because I probably will do a post on my ranking of the James Baldwin novels. But just know that Another Country and this one are my top two. So which one is it? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you that. But yeah, this book is everything. It's full of rage. I would say like the book balances between rage and love. Maybe love even more because there's love in all different aspects, the brotherly love, lustful kind of love, romantic love, love and devotion to the Lord, to God. So there's a lot like going on in aspects of love, but damn is this book full of rage, like seething rage. It's like I could feel the rage from Baldwin when he was writing this. And to me, I feel that this book has aspects of every single one of his novels. Like every single one of his novels, like you could kind of like say, okay, it was almost like, I don't know like the backstory of how this was, if he knew this was going to be his final novel. I really don't know. I think this might have been published after he died. Could I be wrong? I don't really know. But to me, it feels in a way like Baldwin was kind of like reflecting over all of his different works, at least in the novel sense. Maybe even in the essays too, which I did read, I think one of the essays as well. But it just felt like a culmination of all of those works put into this to just create this giant epic book where it's just like he's just letting loose. He's letting loose. He's like doesn't really care. It's kind of like, because even this book in a way is a bit messy in how it's being told too. It's just like all over the place, and I loved it. Yeah, this book, yeah, I say read it. If you like James Baldwin and you haven't read this one, you need to, because I feel like all of his greatness, if you want to call it that, like how he does his prose, how he comes up with characters, the thoughts and things like that he's trying to convey, he really did kind of like do it masterfully in this one. Yeah, so I would say pick up this book. It is gonna blow your mind and rock your world, so give it a go. Next one I'm going to talk about is Shy by Max Porter. Now, I have a love-hate with Max Porter. The first book, Grief is a Thing with Feathers, is the first book that I read from him, and I really don't like that. I still, up till now, do not understand like how everybody loves that book. To me, it was I want to say gibberish and a bit hollow. And I went back to like Goodreads to see like what I had written about it way back when I did read it, and I was just like, yeah, this is how I felt about that book. Lanny was the next one that I read, and I was so in love with it. And then the next book was, I can't remember. It's something of Francis Bacon. And that book, I found it was like way too niche. Maybe it's because I wasn't very familiar with the artist that book was talking about. So I did not really, I wasn't really on board with that book. So for me, I had a love-hate relationship with Max Porter. So when I got this one, I was kind of like, oh boy, this could really go in a direction that I'm not quite too sure about. But yeah, I love this. I love this. Do I love it as much as Lanny? I don't know. I kind of think no, but it's because they have two different aspects. To me, Max Porter is very good at coming up with these like weird kind of sentence, weird structures. He's like all about structure and like reinventing structure, and he has the goods in that. Even in a book like Grief is a Thing with Feathers, I could appreciate that aspect of it. But with this book, he really does like move away from the folklore, supernatural elements that he's known for, the magical elements that he's known for, and it's just a straight up story. This story is about a teenage boy who, alienates himself from everyone, and he's like very aggressive, and he's like always lashing out at people. That is not the most original premise in the world, but he really does it well in this. Like, I felt so much compassion for this character. I was like frustrated with this character a lot. But there were different elements that, with Max Porter's way of like reinventing things, he was really good at like kind of showcasing how Shy, the main character, how he feels towards his music, how he feels towards his friends, and different aspects of it. But doing it in a very original way instead of just telling the story the way that other authors would just naturally tell it. I really, really love this. Like, I was enraptured with it. And to me, this book ended in such a cathartic manner that it was something that I felt like I wanted to do throughout this book. And it ended that way. And I was like, yep. It's the perfect ending. It's the perfect way to like end this book, you know? And in a way, it's also sort of open-ended too. I really adored this book. I say give this one a try. But if you like Max Porter for that folklore, supernatural elements that he puts into his book, maybe you might not feel this one as much, because it basically is a straight up story that's like really like set in reality. But it is the structure that makes this book very unique. Next book I want to talk about is Chain Gang All-Stars. Oh my God, I love this book. I love it. I'm gushing about how much I love it. I read this author's short story collection, Friday Black, a few years ago, and I love that book. Like, I just thought that book was everything. And I just knew in my mind that when this author decides to write a novel, he's gonna blow our minds. And he did it. Such a creative force. This book is almost like Hunger Games-esque, but like has like a lot more brutality. I mean, Hunger Games has brutality, but the aspect of how this story is told, there's a little bit more of a danger, a little bit more of a fire to it, because the people who are fighting in this book, like fighting to the death and stuff like that, are prisoners. And this book is a very unique way and a very original take on how to explore the U.S. prison system. And I would say basically it is the U.S. prison system. I don't really think it applies as much to other places' prison system. Like just the brutality of that system. Now, there were a lot of things that it like played around with, because you have to understand that the characters are prisoners. Most of them are in prison for crimes that they did commit, for heinous crimes. So how do you write a story about characters like that and somehow make us empathize with them? But it's done in such a way that it's kind of trying to show you that even though these characters did these heinous things, they're still human, and the prison system, in the way that it is I mean, in this book, it's created in the prison system is a lot more in a fantastical element. And that was something at first that bothered me with this book, is I was like, oh, this is such a great premise to have like prisoners fight to the death. But like, why couldn't you just do that with the way that life was now and do that element? Why come up with these like, I shouldn't say it's not fantastical in the sense of like supernatural and stuff like that, but it's like, you know, it creates different worlds. It creates different gadgets and things like that that don't really exist in our world now. So for me, I was like, oh, you know, why can't you just keep it realistic in that sense? But actually, no. I do prefer that it was created that way. Like, the more that I went in this book, I'm like, yes, because not only is it doing a scathing exploration of the US prison system, but it's also creating a world. It's keeping you entertained. It's doing something different and outside of the box, and like elements that, you know, might be very intriguing to you and whatever, because it's not exactly like how real life works. Yeah, I just really thought this was really great. The thing that I found was really interesting with the structure, the like inventiveness and how he came up with the structure, is that he talks about the like, in the story, there are footnotes on the bottom, and the footnotes, though, are actually like real life statistics. Like, a lot of times are real life statistics of things like in our real life about the prison system or the judicial system. And that like was really interesting to read, because you're like, oh wow, you're also like learning stuff about like how the prison system works and operates, and who it targets and like all sorts of stuff. So you like have elements of like racially, like how like the statistic of like how many black men or black women will end up in prison, trans men, trans women, like transgender people versus like people who don't identify as trans, and like all sorts of different elements that were things like some things that I just like never knew or never even thought about, you know? And yeah, this book was really good. Compelling characters, like compelling as hell. Two of the best characters that I was gonna say, like two of the best female characters, but then in my mind I'm like, no, not even just female, and that shouldn't even matter anyway. Two of the best characters that I have read this year and in quite some time. This book just, it's ferocious. It's ferocious, and it's just so satisfying, but not satisfying in like what it's doing, but satisfying to see an author who just like takes risks and who knows what he's doing and has complete control over the story that he's telling. Like, on my Goodreads thing, I think I put like just a little thing, and I'm like, I'm so proud of this author. Like, I'm proud of this author. I was reading it and I was like beaming as if like I knew this author, but I was just so proud of like, yes, you did it. You gave us a fire short story collection, Friday Black, and kind of like, you know, teased that you had something like this in you, and you delivered. It was such a fantastic book. Please pick this one up. I guarantee you're gonna be riveted by like what the story is itself, but also like what it's trying to explore and tell us about the world. And now lastly, the book that I want to talk about is The New Life. Okay, so I completed this. I finished this morning. Now, if you saw one of my videos that I wrote, one of the videos that I had telling you like what I was currently reading, and I was saying this one. Oh my God, my hands are shaking like crazy. Yeah, this book to me, at the time that I was reading it, I mean, like everybody like wishes that this is going to be on the Booker long list that comes up, and I wouldn't be mad at it. But I have to admit that this book, I love, don't get me wrong, I like the book. I was going to say I love the book. I don't know if I love it, but I really like it and I really admire it. But as I read it a little bit more, actually there's somebody, one of my friends on Goodreads, I think it's Yohara is how you say her name. She said something in her review that kind of made me be like, yeah, that is what my issue was, is that the characters in this book talk like mouthpieces. In a way, I kind of feel it's like what the author wants to tell us. Another part is that in this book, these two characters are based on like real life characters. So it's like this author kind of used like their theory and the things that they believed in and the stuff that they talked about as like mouthpieces for the characters instead of making them sound natural. Now, there was a part of me that when I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, these characters, especially the main two, are intellectuals, right? And we've all been in conversations or have seen conversations between intellectuals, and sometimes some of the things that they talk about could go over your head, or it's like very based in like theory or research or examples or whatever, and that's the way they talk. So it's not like fully unrealistic, but it was just a bit too much. It was almost like even in moments of intimacy and things like that, like some of the things that would be the characters would be saying just sound like talking points instead of like natural dialogue, or like how that character would talk like when they're alone or with a significant other and things like that. It just was always like conversations about like theory and like this is what I don't know. So yeah, that kind of bogged this book down a little bit. Like, I mean, I'm all for intellectual theory and stuff like that, but when your characters sort of talk like they're just like walking around like these talking intellectual points and whatever, it was a bit aggravating. But don't get me wrong, like I'm not trying to like bring down this book, because I do think it's really good. It's very intelligent, very sensual, like especially if you read like the early pages of this book, it's like sex, like it's there, and sex that's written right and done right. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of this book to admire and to love. And like I said, if this ends up being on the Booker long list, and even if it were to win, would I be upset? No. I'd be happy. I'd nod my head and be like, yeah, great job. But I won't be crying my eyes out if it misses the long list or winning the prize. Now, I guess that's a hot take, because like everyone seems to like love this book, and this book is, I mean, people are talking about it like it's like so amazing and everything like that, and I'm like, yeah, it's good, but like for me personally, it's a bit overhyped, but whatever, like what can I say about that? But anyway, this video ended up being way longer than I thought, because it's 22 minutes long now. The thing I will say is, if you're gonna watch this video on YouTube, maybe you could like put up the speed, like the viewing speed, so you can like watch this a lot quicker than just like parking your butt down and watching this for like 22 minutes as I see. But yeah, that basically was my first reading wrap up in video format, and I might no, you know what I was gonna say, maybe I might have to change up my format and decide to just do this in like editing mode kind of way, but no, I think I'm gonna stick to the format that I'm doing. If you watch all the way through, you watch all the way through. If you don't, you don't. That's fine. But yeah, anyway, so that is my May reading wrap up. It was a pretty good month. And yeah, I'm gonna like end this now before like I take this to 25 minutes. And yeah, so thank you for watching. Love you all. Smooches. Take care. Love you all. Bye.